So when I was stuck, right? Like I was stuck and I couldn't change my life. I couldn't change a single thing about my life until I really learned how to self-coach, right? And that's where, obviously I have my weight loss coaching practice, but I also am a certified Christian life coach. And so I have a lot of clients who I help just get unstuck in their life. But for me personally, like I could not get unstuck until I learned how to self coach. And that's what I teach a lot of the women who work with me, just with personal life coaching, Christian life coaching. And so for a while, until I learned to notice what thoughts I needed to actually start taking captive and what characteristics I had developed by my, late 30s, early 40s, until then, I had to see these things, these characteristics. I had to see the things that were no longer serving me. And until that point, I was stuck and I was completely unable to live the life that I knew was available to me, to live the life that I knew was possible, that I knew was in me. But I was feeling defeated because I was living this life that I had kind of settled for. And the reason I had settled for it is because I was stuck believing in my old ways and believing that change for me was simply impossible. Like I used to just believe that I couldn't change, that I couldn't get unstuck, and that change before I had a relationship with God. I mean, I see this now looking back, but change before I had a relationship with God was impossible. Change became possible once I reprioritized my life and had an actual relationship with God, like an actual relationship with God. And before, like I used to live with an understanding. I used to live with an understanding to be, I don't know how I say this. I used to live to please myself more than I lived to please God. Right? Like, I mean, so many of my own VIP clients, they can relate to this, right? Even in other areas, and even the women in the Seekers Method, they understand that, right? When you live to please your flesh, you create the fruit of your flesh. But when you live to please God, you create the fruit of the Spirit in your life. Does that make sense how I'm saying that? So my question for you, right, for those of you joining me here today, is what in your life are you doing that is not pleasing to God? And for that matter, what is pleasing to the Lord in your life? And I will tell you, for me and for a lot of the women, that I work with, because I don't just work in the weight loss space. I work with women who are having a hard time getting themselves to do what they know they need to do in order to live in the fullness of the life that they want to have. So the main thing that pleases God, I mean, you know this if you have been in the Word for a minute, it's obedience. All right, Sherrie, well, obedience to what? Well, it's obedience to you doing what it is that you should do, not what you want to do, right? That's James 4:17. Not to you doing what is just ideal in your life. Because obedience and submission, those are words that the culture resists. Think about that. Obedience, ew. Like our culture doesn't like that. We've conformed to the patterns of our culture that makes us want to disobey. There's nothing about our culture that says that we should be obedient or submissive. We see these words as like cuss words, really. These are terms and actions and postures that our culture resists, and we have conformed to the patterns of our culture. But this is the exact recipe that you need to have in your life if you want to change. I mean, submission is doing what is right versus what just feels right. So think about those areas in your life, right? Where you can't do hard things. Maybe it's coming home from the office. Maybe it's going out for friends where you're trying to stop over drinking. You've got to start paying attention to and watching for your areas of resistance where you're not doing what you know you should do, because those areas where you are resisting doing what it is that you know you should be doing, this is rebellion, right? And if you know the Bible, you understand how God sees rebellion. This is where you walk in stubbornness. And so many of my coaching clients, they learn to see this, right? They learn to see this, but it's not until they work with me, because you can't see your own stubborn ways very easily. You can't recognize pride and rebellion in yourself easily because it's usually so subtle. And a lot of women reason and justify these characteristics because they define them under different titles. Oh, I'm just really strong-willed, right? I'm type A, and I just do things a certain way. And the reality is we become blinded, spiritually blinded to the errors of our way, blinded to what is really going on. And this is all simply the conditioning of your life, where you're just practicing habits that you're getting good at that aren't serving you. They're taking away from you more than what they're giving to you. Habits of you doing what is ideal, because it's easier to do what is ideal because you've built up this framework of what is ideal because it keeps you comfortable. And when you're living this way, doing what's ideal to you, you're prevented from doing the hard things because those things they're not ideal. They're uncomfortable. You will never take authority over your life and over the outcome and live in the fullness of your faith if you don't actually understand how to, or you don't actually understand, if you don't understand how to, but how to come under God's authority and then practice living submitted to God's authority in your life. He wants to help you, and he will help you to renew your mind, but you're the one who's responsible to identify where it is that you know it's time to change and how to show up differently in those moments where you notice yourself not changing, right? When I work with my clients, that's where I bring awareness to them so they can get unstuck and out of their way. So where for you right now, where do you notice yourself resisting change? You must be willing to change. Your ability to change is an act of your will. It's a conscious decision. And this is the surrender of your desires as you change your will and your desires through Christ, who strengthens you, because he strengthens you to do what you should, not what you want to do. Your mind, think about this, you know this, your mind is the hardest thing to change because it is set. You have a mindset, right? All this is that your thinking is set to patterns. It is set with patterns of thought due to the conditions that you've conformed to. That's all it is. This is why so many women work with me, because I show them how to get aware of the thoughts that they keep practice thinking that create beliefs. And when they believe a certain way, they're unable to believe a different way. Oh, that's profound. So it's time for you to change your mindset. You have got to acknowledge and overcome the conditioning in your life if you want to change. And you know what? It's going to cost you something. So you've got to identify the ideals that you are conditioned to running to in your life, your ideal life that you like, the ideals that you've created in your head, and all of the patterns that are keeping you running to the easier things in your life, right? Instead of you doing the things that you should be doing. You are yielding to conditional ideals in your mindset because you trust these ideals. So in order for you to change, you must yield to a new pattern. You've got to rise above your feelings. You've got to rise above your thoughts. And the only way to release a stubborn nature or your stubborn desires to do what is most ideal to you because you've practiced it in your life, to rise above your stubborn flesh, is to identify what it is you should be doing at what points in the day, week, or month. And in those moments where you're going to be tempted to resist doing what you should, you've got to plan a new way through. You've got to plan a higher way, not a highway, a higher way, where in this higher elevated way, you have the power and self-discipline you need in your spirit, according to 2 Timothy 1:7. That's where and why and how you overcome living in mediocrity. You get unstuck in this Christian life as you live and yield and walk in the spirit, in the direction of the new path, the narrow path. As you say goodbye to all of your old patterns, all of the old ways that you used to conform to, this is how you change your life, get unstuck, and step out of living a life of mediocrity.